Good morning. Can everyone hear me? Awesome. Well, my name is Bob Burns, as he said. I'm with TSA Social Media, and one of the first questions I get from people are, how in the world did you get a gig with TSA and social media? Well, it's just as easy as I was driving by headquarters one day in Arlington, Virginia, and there was this big cardboard sign taped to the window. It said, "Looking for a blogger. Apply within," and that's not how it really was. I've been with TSA since 2002, and I started at the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky Airport in Cincinnati. Did I mention it was in Cincinnati? And I started there in 2002 as a screener, and I started at the very bottom, and prior to that, I had been in a band for about 7 years, so I really had zero aviation security experience. So I knew when I took the job that I had to volunteer for everything. And volunteering for everything got me in a lot of interesting situations, and one of them was being selected for the administrator's advisory council at headquarters. So I would travel up there quarterly and talk to the administrator about the perception to policies and procedures in the field. And long story short, the administrator noticed that I had a passion for communication and that I had a sense of humor, so he says. And he wanted to know if I'd like to blog for him, because he wanted to start a blog. And the reason he wanted the blog because there was a lot of pushback on our policies and procedures, and there was a lot of, TSA, everyone loves us. And, we don't have a big target on our back or anything. But there's a lot of things reported about us in the media, and, surprise, surprise, a lot of them are inaccurate or didn't have the full story. And prior to launching the blog, there was really no way to push back. So that's where I come in. He wanted me to come to headquarters and help him communicate with the public. And as you can see, we have more than 2 million passengers. Well, this is in 2016. We screen more than 2 million passengers a day. So could you see the need for maybe needing to communicate with the traveling public if we have that many passengers a day coming through our checkpoints? Well, as you're all aware in this room, there's many types of digital transformation. But what I'll be talking about today is TSA's digital transformation as it applies to social media and the way we used it to start communicating more with the traveling public. So by using all of our social media tools to communicate with the public, our goal is to inform, to educate, and while we're not in the entertainment business, we like to be a little bit funny because, aviation security is not the funniest topic. It's pretty dry, and it can put you to sleep. So we try to pull people in with a little bit of personality and show that we're human. Before social media, if something happened, if we wanted to communicate, we had your traditional ways of press releases, our website, tsa.gov, spokespeople in the field. But other than that, we had no way for two-way communication with the public. And that's why our administrator at the time, Kip Hawley, he wanted to start a blog. Most people I talk to, it's an uphill battle to start a blog or start any kind of social media in their organization. But with ours, our administrator wanted it. And he wanted the blog for a while, and public affairs wouldn't give him one because, at that time in 2008, there really weren't a whole lot of government entities on social media. It's more, you just want to keep things tight and close, and social media was kind of a scary word to a lot of people because with social media comes criticism. And so you have to be able to embrace that criticism and know that, not everyone likes you. And speaking of, the way I get around that is, I'm a huge Beatles fan, and I know there's people that don't like the Beatles. So how could you expect everyone to like TSA? That's the way I wrap my brain around it. But, we launched a blog in 2008, and from there we started communicating with the traveling public, and we put out a press release to announce the blog. And it was talking about how the blog was going to be there to talk about policies and procedures and travel tips. And so the next day when it launched, I saw this travel ticker or news ticker on all the major networks. It said, TSA launches a blog. Got a beef with TSA? Let them hear about it now. So that night, we had 2,000 comments come in right away. And silly us, we had email alerts set for each comment that would come in. So, but what this told us was there's been that gap for a long time of the public wanting to communicate directly with us instead of having to dial a 1-800 number or sending an email and ending up getting a boilerplate response that has nothing to do with what you inquired about. So that's why we started with the blog. And of course, the blog led into Twitter. We started Twitter in 2008 and started communicating with Twitter. And we had a lot of success stories with the blog where we could explain policies and procedures. We could have myth busters. If someone's accusing us of doing something we didn't do and it gets viral to the point to where it's affecting or damaging our reputation, we push back. One of the more notable ones was in 2009, I believe, 2010 maybe. A woman was traveling through Atlanta with her son, and she claimed that we took her son from out of her sight for up to 5 or 10 minutes and screened her. And she was a mommy blogger, had a big audience, and she appealed to her followers to help her because this wasn't right. We got to let TSA know this wasn't right. And she was drumming up support to just drag us through the mud. So we looked through the security footage at the Atlanta checkpoint. If you've ever been through Atlanta checkpoint, there's a lot of lanes. So there was a lot of security footage to go through. But we found the footage of her going through, and we knew who she was because she has her picture on her blog. And lo and behold, the whole time she was being screened, her son was sitting right next to her. He was never taken out of her sight. Now, normally, if this was just somebody who was blogging out of their basement and didn't really have a malicious purpose, didn't have any idea this was going to go viral, we might just let it go. But this was an actual case where she was actually trying to do damage. So we got with our chief counsel, and she gave us approval to post footage of the video on our blog. And I've never seen sentiment turn around so fast. People were actually apologizing for not knowing the whole story before they criticized us. There were people that you couldn't pay to say nice things about us saying, we got it wrong. And that was the first big example that embracing this new technology and while still using the traditional methods of communication, but moving forward with our new technology, we've got a whole new audience we can reach and a whole new way we can use this technology. And through the success of the blog, what I'm leading up to is the launch of our Instagram account, which we launched in 2013. And, I was in a band for 7 years, and never in a million years did I think that I would end up in Rolling Stone by being a government social media specialist. Like, where were you guys when I was in the band? I don't know. But I was at a conference like this, and I got an email, and it said we had made the number 4 spot on Rolling Stone's top 100 list of Instagram accounts to follow. And I couldn't believe it, especially when I looked at the list and saw who was on it, which is just, it really wows me. But the most important thing is what the spokesperson said about why we were chosen. They found us fascinating, entertaining, and terrifying. Well, I don't try to terrify people, but it's the travelers that are packing these things in their bag. And I share images of these items. And while I'm showing that our officers did their job and found these items, I'm also providing travel tips. Like, you can't bring a hand grenade to the checkpoint, in case you didn't know that. She said it opened our eyes to what they have to deal with on a regular basis. And that's one of the main goals we've had with social media, especially with Instagram, is, if you're traveling through the checkpoint, you don't really care much about what TSA is doing, the bigger picture. You want to get through the checkpoint and get to your gate, have your Starbucks or your IPA or whatever it is you drink at the gate, and you want to get on your plane. You're not really worried about what's going on at TSA. But through our social media, we're able to give an inside look, a behind-the-scenes look at what our officers are doing. Before we launched social media, before we launched Instagram, a lot of people didn't realize that our officers are finding about 70 guns a week and carry-on bags. And usually about 60 of those are loaded. People didn't know that. They just they see when we're keeping water off the plane. By the way, if you have any liquids in here, please put them in a baggie and remove your shoes for me. But so I was glad when they said that they could, they're fascinated by seeing what we deal with on a regular basis, because that was one of our main goals. And they also said they enjoy seeing airport life from our perspective, which is another one of our goals, is to show, that we have a mission, this is what we're doing and what we're accomplishing, and also that, we're humans. We like to show a lot of our employees on social media as well. We're not some nameless government employees in the bowels of some deep, dark building. We're actually just like you, just a different job. So Beyonce was number 5. And while I think that's incredibly funny that she was number 5, it blows my mind. Rolling Stone picked a government Instagram account over Beyonce, which, unless you like looking at lots of pictures of Beyonce in different poses, it's not really that fascinating. So maybe I can't understand why she made number 5. But I've been expecting Kanye to show up at my door, and tell me I don't deserve it, and to let her have number 4. But sorry, Beyonce. We have a never-ending source of content at TSA. A lot of people ask me where I get my images. Some people think that our officers at the checkpoints are snapping pictures as they work all day and just uploading them willy-nilly. And while that would be very interesting to see what that result would be, that's not how it works. We receive content in all sorts of different ways, but the main way I receive content, especially of the prohibited items, we have a small pocket knife or a bottle of water or insignificant small prohibited items don't generate an incident report. But some of the larger items like pocket knives, not pocket knives, but throwing knives, firearms, hand grenades, things of that nature, they generate an incident report. And through that incident report, I'm able to get a weekly rundown of what was discovered across the country. And there's photographs taken for the incident reports, and I'm able to request these photographs. And it's pretty interesting because sometimes there isn't a photograph and I have to request it, and the incident report will just say 6-inch knife. And I could get a picture of a kitchen knife, or I could get a picture of a double-bladed fantasy knife. And the fantasy knife is what I'm looking for, because through our content, we like to, I just don't post pictures because we have them. I like to pick the strongest. I like to pick the best of the best, and sometimes I'll even go a day or 2 or 3 days without posting anything if I don't have something interesting to post. One of the best compliments I had from somebody was they said they like to go, the first time they went to the TSA Instagram account, they binge scrolled. And I've never heard binge scroll before. I've heard of binge watch for Netflix and Amazon, but they binge scrolled our content. So, and I've heard that from more than one person. They look at our page, and next thing you know, it's 2 hours later, and they've gone through all of our posts. But I look for the strongest content that'll generate discussion and catch your eye, that I can educate with and inform. And once again, like I said, we're not in the entertainment business, but by being a little bit funny, we keep people around. And right now we're up to, I think, 802,000 followers. And if we have a really important message we want to share, we've got 802,000 people just sitting there waiting to see it. And so through entertaining people and keeping them happy, we can also drop the occasional PSA every now and then. The rest of the images we get from, we can get them from passengers, from travelers and the public. They might send us an instant message with a story. Also, there's lots of spokespeople in the field and officers that know what I'm doing, and they'll send me a tip every now and then. Here's an example. What I'm going to do, I'm going to show you some examples of how we use Instagram at TSA to communicate. And this is an example of a canine that retired, and they had a retirement party for it. And There you go. That was named Faulty. She's an explosives detection canine. This is an example of how we like to humanize our workforce. The gentleman in the Santa Claus outfit is actually a transportation security officer that works at one of the airports, and he volunteers his time at a hospital every Christmas to entertain kids as Santa Claus. That's actually at Dallas-Fort Worth. This is one of my favorites that we actually received from somebody, from a traveler. For a TSA bomb dog, for the explosive detection canines, they go through 1 year of foster family first before they start their training, because they need to socialize the dog in noisy environments like airports, grocery stores, elevators, escalators, you name it. They have to socialize them for a year and get them accustomed to all the noises they might be exposed to. Well, this young lady, when she was in college, she volunteered to watch this canine for a year. And then when she gave him up, she thought she'd never see him again. Well, she was traveling through the airport, and they recognized each other. And so they had a little heartfelt reunion, and the explosive detection canine officer was going on break, so he was able to take a break, and they were able to spend some time together. And we were able to share the story because she actually alerted us to it. This little guy is not happy. He was discovered in a checked bag at TSA screening. So he had gone through the conveyor belts through the airport and had been filtered down through into the checked baggage location, where our TSA officers were surprised to find a live Chihuahua jump out of the suitcase. And the woman claims that when she packs her bags, the Chihuahua jumps in the bag and wants to go with her. But I guess this time she didn't see the Chihuahua, and she packed it. You know, I still kind of find it hard to believe, but it happened, and they were reunited. But luckily, we found this little dog, because once it went into it gets pretty cold in the cargo area of the airliner, so I don't know if it would have made it for the whole trip. This is just an example of informing the traveling public. TSA officers used to be trained out of airports. The airport they were going to work at is where they were trained. Well, now we have TSA training at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Georgia. So it's centralized training, and this is just a way of informing the traveling public of how we're training our officers now. People love infographics, especially when they're shocking like this one. This one shows that, I think this was 2016. This shows the top 10 airports where we had the highest number of firearm discoveries. You can see Texas was a popular state. And Atlanta. But when we put out information like this, people find it fascinating, especially if they travel out of these airports. It generates a lot of conversation and a lot of people saying, what were they thinking? Well, I don't know. I mean, some people, I mean, I'm a firearm owner, and I would never forget where my firearm was, but, you know, we had, how many people? We had almost 3,000 firearms last year discovered and carry-on bags. And my logic is, if you're carrying your firearm for protection, how are you going to use it if you forgot you had it? And that's the biggest excuse we get is, I forgot it was there. And one of my favorites, a guy blamed it on his mom. So this is our super double secret TSA Instagram formula. Weapons plus dogs equal Instagram gold. And I like to say that I was some kind of mad genius and I planned this, but it just so kind of happened where, you know, I'm showing the items that we discover, and I'm also showing our canines. And it just kind of mixed together well, and I've seen so many comments from people saying, it's a weird formula, but it really works. It's almost like I said, we're not trying to terrify people, but people will say, you know, I get terrified about some of these items they're discovering, and then I see this cute dog, and the world's good again. So what are people thinking? I love it because we'll get a question from somebody saying, can I pack my nail clippers? And nail clippers are allowed, by the way. Right after 9/11, before TSA took over, they were prohibited, which is why a lot of people still think they're prohibited. But as long as there isn't like a little knife blade, they're allowed. But battle axes, of course, are not. So you have people that are really concerned about whether they can pack their nail clippers or not, but you got the next person packing a battle axe in their carry-on bag. So what are people thinking? I really don't know. And that's one of the reasons why we share these images, is not only to entertain people and show that our officers are doing their job, but to inform people, in case they didn't know, that no, you can't bring your battle axe in your carry-on bag. You can pack it in your check bag. You can pack firearms in your check bag as long as you follow the guidelines, but not your carry-on. Like this gentleman who packed a replica suicide vest. You just have to wonder. I mean, sure, it's not real, but we don't know that. The first we see it, and we have to respond with bomb appraisal officers have to come check it out. We can't just pull it out of the bag and shake it and say, yeah, I think it's fake. And so what happens a lot of times when things like this come through is we have to shut down the checkpoint or the checked baggage area, which can lead to costly delays for the airline and make people miss important meetings and deadlines, and just a big chain effect when things like this happen. So this is something that you couldn't pack in your check bag. So you just can't pack this at all. The vest, that's fine. The rest of it, no. One of my favorites, a jawbone grenade tomahawk. You've got this ornate tomahawk with a jawbone and then a pineapple grenade attached to it. I've got no idea why, but that was in a carry-on bag. Sparking conversation. I like to use this slide to talk about using images that create conversation. Now, the cigarette pack you see there is actually a stun gun, and that's why they took the picture. But the little claw in the corner, I really don't know what it is, but I made sure to leave it in there. I think it's an alligator claw cigarette case, maybe. I've seen those before, but I have no idea. But I left it in on purpose because I knew it would drive people crazy. Here's a few of the comments we got. Are we just going to pretend there's no dinosaur claw in the photo? Looks like you're in need of a good moisturizer. And I'm not sure which one is more stunning. And we had a ton of comments on this one. There was a lot of really good engagement, and people had fun with it. And I try to write humorous captions for these, and I try to be punny and use I'm a father of two, so I've got a big arsenal of dad jokes that I use on people. But the funniest stuff a lot of times is from our followers. They post some of the best stuff. They really help the page be as entertaining as it is. Somebody brought a replica of Lucille through the checkpoint. If you're not familiar with Lucille, it's the bat used in The Walking Dead. And it even comes complete with fake blood spatter on it. And that was in someone's check bag or carry-on bag. And the barbed wire was actually rubber. It wasn't real, but baseball bats are considered a bludgeon, and you can't bring them in your carry-on bag. But this is an example of how whenever we can use pop culture to take our message a little bit further, we will. And this got quite a bit of play off of Instagram, where you get media outlets writing about it, because it's just kind of shocking that someone would bring that in their carry-on bag. We always like to have fun on Star Wars Day, and that's another example of using just a popular item to take your message forward. What we do is we use all the hashtags that go with Star Wars Day, but what's happening is people are like, oh my God, TSA posted they won the internet today or whatever, and all these people are following this hashtag that had never been to TSA's Instagram before. So we're pulling in all these new followers, and we see all these comments like, TSA has an Instagram account? Who knew? I had no idea. So posts like this really help bring those people in to follow us. And in this case, I tied this in with a message about TSA. It says, please let our officers know if you have a medically necessary item that can't be removed so they can accommodate your screening. And if you're not a big Star Wars fan, Darth Vader needed his helmet to breathe. Meat slicer. I mean, just saying meat slicer is funny. Someone tried to bring that in their carry-on, and of course, the slicer itself without the blade is okay, but the blade is a no-no. And the reason I like to use this slide is you just never know where your content is going to end up. It ended up on the At Midnight show with Chris Hardwick, speaking of Walking Dead. So he had some fun talking about it, which eventually led to this. He included this on his game show, and he said, which of the following was recently seized by the TSA? A Klingon bat'leth from Star Trek, Master Sword from The Legend of Zelda, or a set of Dark Knight replica batarangs? Anyone know the answer? All of them. All of the above. And if you follow our Instagram account, you'll know that batarangs are quite the popular item that we find in carry-on bags. It's just that people love their batarangs, and they just got to take them with them when they travel. But yeah, you just never know where your content's going to end up. And that's, people ask, we have 802,000 followers now, and people think that we actively advertise to get those followers. And other than links on TSA.gov and maybe mentioning it on Twitter every now and then, all of our following has been organic. People just finding out word of mouth and from other sources. I was kind of pushing the limits with this post, but you can't take your hoe on the airplane. And this is the only post that was shared, the only TSA post that's been shared by World Star Hip Hop, which is kind of like a badge of honor. I got a screenshot of that. But yeah, and a lot of people thought that the rust on the hoe was blood, but it's rust. People were convinced that it was blood, but no. This is an example of people, they can hide things anywhere. And these are hollowed out Bibles with bullets inside of them that someone tried to get through. That was a real mace. Solid wood, and the spiked ball was steel. Someone just had to travel with it. Be perfectly fine in your check bag, but not in your carry-on. Not in your carry-on. And I could just see someone swinging that thing around inside the plane. I don't know. This is one we used because we knew it would be popular because of how they hid the firearm. But we get a lot of complaints from people who will be going through our checkpoints, and they'll see us, that horrible moment when we have to take a child's teddy bear and put it through the X-ray, and they just don't want to part with the teddy bear. I mean, we try to tell them you're going to get it back, but we know at that point we seem like evil Death Star TSA employees that are taking children's stuffed animals away. But this is a case where a loaded firearm was found disassembled in several stuffed animals at a checkpoint. That was in May of 2012 in Providence. This is part that terrifies people, but we like to inform our audience. And what you have here isn't something we found at the checkpoint. Our bomb experts actually assembled this laptop improvised explosive device. And what looks like cornflakes in that bag is actually dynamite flakes with the detonator on top and the toggle switch. And people always wonder why we search laptops. Why do you have such an interest in laptops? And this is why. And it's not just something we thought, terrorists might use this. They might try to use it this way. It's actually been gathered by intelligence. This is one way they look to get bombs through. So instead of people just being left kind of clueless as to why we're paying so much attention to laptops, we share this. Your pie can fly. This was submitted by one of our followers, and she said, I just wanted to let you guys know I've got proof that my pizza can fly through the checkpoint. And she put it through the X-ray there. And we already knew that, but we thought this would be a great example to share with people. And I really didn't know there were that many people who didn't know they could take pizza on the plane. You can actually take all sorts of solid food items on the plane, including a pizza. So this changed a lot of people's lives, apparently. In the comments, they were like, "This is life-changing. Travel is so much better now," and pizza saves the day. I use this post to inform our followers about our lost and found programs at airports. If you leave a laptop behind, we don't just give it to the airport, or we don't just take conceal it, or maybe it really was a gift. But just an example of, if just because it's wrapped in pretty Christmas paper or birthday wrapping or whatever, doesn't mean that there's nothing inside of the box. One of my favorites, a gentleman in Atlanta came through the checkpoint with a movie prop from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So you can imagine the looks he was getting as he's wheeling his thing through the airport. And he comes up to the checkpoint, and of course we're like, how are we going to screen this thing? And it just so happened that it would fit through our X-ray. So as you can see in the pictures there, it's actually being wheeled through the conveyor belt. And he was screened and sent on his jolly little way. And people ask, why was he traveling with the prop? And I don't know. I mean, maybe it's his friend. Maybe it's like some type of guerrilla marketing. I don't know. But it is another example of how I wouldn't have known about this image if I hadn't been following a private TSA employee Facebook page out there. Someone from Atlanta posted this, and I saw it, and I was like, it blows my mind because some people just don't automatically think that, hey, maybe the TSA Instagram account could use this. If I hadn't been on that Facebook page, I never, ever would have seen this. Has anybody here used Ask TSA? Wow, so I got a lot of people to introduce to Ask TSA. Ask TSA is another great example of they'll just send us a picture and say, can I bring this? And I'll highlight those on our Instagram account. And in this case, they wanted to know if they could bring some bratwurst. And you got a crock pot there full of all sorts of like onions and juices. And of course, I explained that, you know, you could bring the crock pot and the bratwurst, but all the liquid had to stay behind. But then I wrote this. I'm kind of proud of this one. I wrote, I try to be punny with this post, but my puns are the worst. But about once a week, once every 2 weeks, we'll share a screenshot that we received through Ask TSA to advertise the account. But yeah, try it. If anyone here has any questions before they travel out of here, go to Ask TSA on Twitter, and we're also on Facebook Messenger. Tell them Bob sent you. So someone that uses, that follows us on Instagram said, I love your approach to Instagram. It takes something that can seem overwhelming and possibly frightening, like TSA regulations, and makes you all seem approachable, like a teacher you don't feel stupid asking questions to. And that's perfect. I mean, when I hear stuff like that, it's like mission successful. So should you use Instagram? It depends. If you have a never-ending source of content that you could share with people that would create conversation, interest people, educate them, inform them, by all means. But if you just want to launch Instagram as a way to just have another social media account, then I would say no. I mean, you shouldn't really embrace a tool unless you actually have a really good use for it. And if you've got a unique need, a message you want to get out, a conversation you want to change, such as TSA's conversation prior to all this was, TSA sucks. I know some of you have said it. TSA sucks. TSA made me wait in line forever. I missed my flight. It changed the conversation to, oh my God, TSA's finding 70 firearms a week. Now I know why the lines are long. Did you see what TSA caught last week? Wow, I didn't know they had to go through, I didn't know they found all this stuff. So we're changing the conversation. And if you have a conversation you'd like to change also, then Instagram or any other type of social media might work out for you. And I've got 26 seconds left, so thank you very much.